Don't skip this, because if you're watching at this exact moment, it may not be a coincidence. Someone has been thinking about you more than you realize. For days, maybe even weeks, they've been holding back words they've wanted to say. But now, something is changing. They're gathering the courage to approach you, and what they want to tell you could leave a lasting impact on your heart. Before you assume you know who this is or what they're going to say, stay with me until the very end. The message you're about to hear may reveal emotions, intentions, or truths you never expected. Let's begin. There are moments in life when heaven begins moving quietly, so quietly that most people mistake it for coincidence. But you were not guided here by accident. Something has been shifting behind the scenes of your life. Doors that seemed frozen have started to loosen. Hearts that appeared distant have begun to soften. Thoughts that were hidden in silence are preparing to become spoken words. And one particular person. They have reached a place where pretending no longer feels possible. Every time they tried to ignore what they felt, your name somehow returned to their mind. Every ordinary moment reminded them of something connected to you. A familiar song. A random conversation. A place they never expected to revisit. Somehow, everything kept leading back to you. That is not because the universe is playing games. Sometimes God allows repeated reminders because a heart is finally becoming ready to face what it has been running from. But here is what makes this message different. The words they want to tell you are not only about emotions. They are carrying something much deeper. Something they have hidden for far too long. Perhaps it is gratitude they never expressed. Perhaps it is an apology they rehearsed hundreds of times but never had the courage to speak. Or perhaps it is a truth that has completely transformed the way they see you. Right now, you may already feel that someone has been appearing in your thoughts unexpectedly. Maybe you've tried to dismiss it. Maybe you told yourself it meant nothing. But what if those quiet moments weren't random? What if your spirit was sensing movement before your eyes could ever witness it? Sometimes the soul recognizes change long before circumstances reveal it. That is why patience often feels so difficult. Deep inside, part of you already knows something is approaching. Not because you have proof, but because peace has been slowly replacing confusion. And peace is often heaven's first whisper before an answer arrives. Here's something many people never understand. Not every delayed conversation is rejection. Sometimes silence is preparation. God has a way of working inside people before bringing them back into your life. While you were growing through disappointment, they were growing through realization. While you were learning how to let go, they were learning the true value of what they almost lost. Neither journey happened by accident. Both journeys were unfolding at exactly the right time. Now imagine this. The person who once struggled to express even a single honest feeling is suddenly preparing to say everything they couldn't say before. Can you feel how powerful that moment could become? Not because every conversation changes your future, but because some conversations close old chapters, while quietly opening doors you never imagined were still waiting. This is why your heart has been restless lately. Not anxious. Not fearful. Just unusually aware. As though something invisible keeps telling you, stay open. Because when heaven prepares to answer a prayer, it rarely looks the way we imagined. Sometimes the answer walks toward us wearing the face of someone we thought had already passed through our story. But don't rush ahead. There is still something about this person that you cannot see. One detail. One hidden reason. One unexpected emotion. And once you discover what has truly been happening inside their heart, everything you've been questioning may suddenly begin to make sense. Yet that revelation comes next. They almost reached out before. But each time, something inside them whispered, not yet. Not because they stopped caring. Not because they forgot you. But because they knew that words spoken before the heart is ready can create more confusion than healing. So heaven allowed time to do what pressure never could. While you were living your own story, something remarkable was unfolding inside theirs. The pride that once kept them silent began to crumble. The fear that convinced them to stay distant started losing its grip. Little by little, they began seeing your presence through completely different eyes. Have you ever wondered why certain people disappear just long enough to understand what they truly had? Sometimes distance is not punishment. Sometimes it becomes the mirror that reveals what closeness could not. This person has been standing in front of that mirror. And what they've seen has been impossible to ignore. Late at night, when everything around them becomes quiet, your memory returns. Not as regret alone, but as a question they can no longer escape. What if I should have said something sooner? That question has followed them through ordinary days and sleepless nights. It has interrupted conversations. It has appeared during moments when they least expected it. Even while trying to move forward, something kept pulling their attention back toward you. That is because some connections are not built on convenience. They are built on purpose. Purpose has a remarkable way of waiting patiently until both hearts are prepared to recognize it. But here's what you may not realize. You have changed, too. You are not the same person you were when this chapter first began. The challenges you've faced have strengthened your spirit. The disappointments you've survived have deepened your wisdom. The tears no one else saw became silent prayers that heaven never ignored. Sometimes we believe nothing is happening simply because we cannot see it. Yet beneath the surface, God is arranging conversations before they happen. Healing emotions before they are spoken. Softening hearts before they meet again. Think about a seed buried beneath the ground. For weeks, it appears as though nothing is growing. But underneath, life is quietly preparing for the moment it finally breaks into the light. Perhaps that is exactly where this connection has been. Not dead. Not forgotten. Simply preparing. Now here's the part that may surprise you. The first words they want to say are probably not the words you've imagined. You may expect an explanation. You may expect a confession. You may expect them to focus on the past. But their heart has been leading them somewhere different. Because after everything they've experienced, they've realized that some truths are too important to keep hidden any longer. There is one sentence. One deeply personal sentence. That has echoed through their thoughts again and again. They've imagined saying it while driving. They've imagined saying it while lying awake at night. They've imagined what your face might look like the moment you hear it. And every time they picture that moment, their heartbeat changes. Because vulnerability is never easy. Especially for someone who has spent so long protecting their emotions. But something stronger than fear has finally begun rising inside them. Courage. Quiet. Steady. Unstoppable courage. And when courage finally becomes greater than fear, lives begin to change. Relationships begin to heal. Stories begin to turn in unexpected directions. So if you've been sensing that something feels different lately, trust that gentle feeling. Not because every expectation comes true exactly as we imagine, but because hope often arrives before the evidence does. Still, there is one final obstacle standing between them and the conversation they've been preparing for. A single moment. A single decision. A single step they must choose to take. And what happens when that moment finally arrives may reveal far more than either of you expected. The greatest turning points rarely begin with a grand announcement. They begin with one quiet decision. One heartbeat. One moment when someone finally says, "I can't stay silent anymore." That moment is closer than it has ever been. For so long, this person has carried an invisible conversation inside their mind. They imagined every possible outcome. They wondered whether you would listen. Whether you had already moved on. Whether the opportunity they once let slip away had disappeared forever. Fear kept asking questions. But hope kept answering them. And eventually, hope became louder. That is often how God works. He does not always remove fear overnight. Instead, He plants courage so deeply within the heart that fear no longer gets the final word. Perhaps you've noticed something changing within yourself as well. You're no longer chasing every answer. You're no longer forcing every door to open. Instead, you've been learning something far more powerful. Trust. Not blind trust in people, but quiet trust that what belongs in your life will arrive at the right time. That inner peace did not appear by accident. It was built through every lesson you survived. Every unanswered prayer that later made sense. Every delay that protected you from rushing into the wrong season. And now, heaven is inviting you to stay open, not desperate. There is a difference. Desperation tries to control tomorrow. Faith prepares the heart to receive tomorrow. That is the posture your spirit has been learning. Because when this person approaches you, the conversation may not unfold exactly as you've imagined. It may begin awkwardly. There may be long pauses. Nervous smiles. Words that don't come out perfectly. But don't mistake imperfect words for an unprepared heart. Sometimes the most genuine conversations are the ones without polished speeches. They simply come from a place that can no longer hide the truth. This person has spent enough time pretending everything was fine. Now they want something real. Not perfect. Real. And there is something else you should know. While they were preparing to speak, you were unknowingly preparing to hear. That is one of heaven's quiet miracles. It doesn't only prepare the messenger. It prepares the listener. There may have been days when you felt prompted to forgive, even though no one had apologized. Days when your heart felt unexpectedly lighter, even without knowing why. Moments when resentment slowly gave way to compassion. Those moments were not meaningless. They were shaping your heart for what comes next. Because healing often begins before the conversation ever takes place. But don't assume you already know every detail. There is one truth this person has never spoken aloud. Not to their friends. Not to their family. Not even to themselves with complete honesty. They've carried it in silence because speaking it would make everything real. And once it's spoken, nothing will ever feel quite the same again. That's why they've hesitated. Not because they lacked feelings, but because they understood the weight of those feelings. Now the silence has become heavier than the truth itself. And that is why change is finally beginning. So if today feels strangely significant, if something inside you keeps whispering, pay attention. Don't ignore that gentle nudge. Sometimes the smallest impressions become the beginning of the biggest chapters. The words you've been waiting to hear. The explanation you never thought would come. The emotion they've hidden for so long. They're all closer than you realize. But before those words are finally spoken, one unexpected event is about to unfold. An event neither of you planned, yet one that could become the very reason your paths cross again. And when that happens, you'll finally understand why this moment found you today. A single unexpected moment. That's all it sometimes takes for two paths to cross again. Not through force. Not through coincidence. But through timing that only heaven could arrange. You may wake up one ordinary morning believing it's just another day, only to discover that what seemed ordinary was quietly carrying an extraordinary purpose. This is how divine timing often works. It hides inside the routine. It arrives without loud announcements. And before you realize it, everything begins to look different. The person who has been preparing to approach you has been fighting one final battle, not with you, but within themselves. They've asked questions they never thought they would ask. What if I waited too long? What if they no longer want to hear from me? What if I missed my chance? Those questions have echoed through their heart again and again. Yet every time fear tried to convince them to remain silent, another voice gently reminded them. Truth is always worth speaking. That quiet conviction has become impossible to ignore. And perhaps, without even realizing it, you've been preparing for this moment too. Think back over the past few weeks. Have you noticed how certain memories have surfaced for no obvious reason? Not to trap you in the past, but to help you see it with new understanding. Sometimes God allows us to revisit old chapters, not so we can relive the pain, but so we can recognize how much we've grown. You're not standing where you used to stand. Your heart has matured. Your spirit has become steadier. The things that once overwhelmed you no longer hold the same power. That growth matters. Because the version of you that will hear these words is stronger than the version that once waited for them. And that changes everything. Now imagine this. The moment finally arrives. You see them. For a brief second, time feels slower. Neither of you knows exactly how to begin. The silence isn't uncomfortable. It's meaningful. It's filled with everything that was never said. Then, with a deep breath, they choose honesty over hiding. Not because they have every answer, but because they can no longer live with unspoken truth. Their voice may tremble. Their hands may shake. Yet their heart will be clearer than it has ever been. What they want is not simply to explain the past. They want you to understand what changed inside them. Because real transformation isn't proven by promises. It's revealed through humility. Through accountability. Through the courage to admit what should have been said long ago. And whether this conversation leads to a renewed connection, lasting closure, or the beginning of an entirely new chapter. One thing is certain. You will leave that moment lighter than you entered it. Some conversations don't just answer questions. They release burdens. They free hearts from carrying yesterday into tomorrow. So don't rush ahead trying to predict every detail. Stay present. Stay hopeful. Stay open to what God may be arranging beyond what your eyes can currently see. Because sometimes the greatest blessing isn't that someone finally finds the courage to speak. It's that your heart has finally become ready to hear. If this message resonated with your spirit, take a quiet moment today to reflect on the people, lessons, and prayers that have shaped your journey. And remember, what is guided by truth, patience, and divine timing never arrives too late. I'll see you in the next message. Part 5. Before this message comes to its final chapter, there is one more truth your heart needs to hear. Not about them. About you. Because while so much of this journey has seemed focused on the person preparing to approach you, heaven has been watching something even more remarkable. The transformation taking place within your own soul. Months ago, you might have accepted words simply because you wanted to hear them. Today, you seek something deeper. Consistency. Peace. Sincerity. You no longer want empty promises wrapped in beautiful language. You want actions that match the heart behind them. That change did not happen overnight. It was shaped by every unanswered question. Every closed door. Every moment when you wondered why life seemed so quiet. What felt like waiting was actually preparation. And preparation always has a purpose. This is why you must not let fear speak louder than faith when this new chapter begins. The past has a way of whispering. They'll disappoint you again. But wisdom gently replies. You don't have to relive yesterday to welcome tomorrow. There is a difference between remembering a lesson and living inside an old wound. Heaven never asks you to ignore wisdom. It simply asks you not to let fear become your guide. Because fear builds walls. Faith builds discernment. And discernment allows you to recognize what is genuine without closing your heart. That is the gift you've been developing all along. Now imagine the moment after the conversation ends. The words have been spoken. The silence has been broken. Neither of you is exactly the same as before. Something invisible has shifted. Not because every problem disappeared, but because truth finally entered the room. Truth has a remarkable way of bringing peace, even before it brings answers. And peace is one of heaven's clearest signatures. So if this person truly approaches you, listen with both wisdom and compassion. You are not being asked to rush. You are not being asked to decide everything in one moment. You are simply being invited to see clearly. Sometimes the greatest miracle isn't that someone returns. It's that your heart no longer depends on whether they do. That is freedom. That is healing. That is the quiet strength God has been building inside you all this time. So walk forward with confidence. Not because you know exactly what tomorrow holds, but because you know who holds tomorrow. Trust the timing. Trust the growth. Trust the peace that has been quietly replacing uncertainty. Because what is meant to reach you will never require you to abandon your worth. And what is truly guided by God will always draw you closer to hope, wisdom, and love, not confusion. As this message comes to a close, carry this thought with you. The conversation you've been wondering about may begin with someone else's courage. But its greatest purpose may be to reveal just how far you've come. The next chapter isn't defined by your past. It's defined by the person you've become. And perhaps, very soon, you'll understand why this message found you exactly when it did. Part 6. And now, before you leave, there is one final whisper that deserves your full attention. Not every message from heaven arrives to predict the future. Sometimes it arrives to prepare your heart for it. That is what this moment has been about all along. You may have started this journey wondering who is planning to approach you. But perhaps the greater question has always been, who are you becoming before they arrive? Because every meaningful encounter is shaped long before two people stand face to face. It is shaped in quiet mornings, in difficult decisions, in prayers no one else heard, in the strength you discovered after believing you had none left. Heaven has seen every step, every tear you never explained, every smile you wore while carrying hidden burdens, every time you chose kindness instead of bitterness. None of it was wasted. Every moment was shaping the person you are today. And now, someone is preparing to witness that new version of you. Not the person they remember. Not the person they misunderstood. But the person refined by patience, wisdom, and grace. That is why this meeting, whenever it happens, will not be a repeat of the past. It cannot be. Because you are no longer standing in the same season. The old chapter taught you valuable lessons. The new chapter will ask you to apply them. So when they finally stand before you, don't measure them only by who they used to be. Look at who they are choosing to become. In the same way, don't measure yourself by old mistakes or forgotten disappointments. Remember how much you've grown. Remember how far you've come. Growth is one of God's quietest miracles. It happens so gradually that we often fail to notice it. Until one day we respond with peace where we once would have reacted with pain. That is the evidence of transformation. And that transformation is your greatest blessing. There may still be questions. There may still be moments of uncertainty. That's normal. Faith has never required knowing every detail. It simply asks you to take the next step with a peaceful heart. So if this conversation unfolds in the days or weeks ahead, receive it with wisdom. Listen carefully. Speak honestly. Allow grace to guide every word. Because the strongest relationships are not built on perfect beginnings. They are built on truthful foundations. As you move forward, remember this promise. What is truly meant for your life will never need deception to survive. It will never demand that you lose yourself to keep it. It will invite peace instead of constant fear. It will encourage growth instead of confusion. And whether this person becomes part of your next chapter, or simply helps close the previous one, trust that heaven's purpose is always greater than your expectations. Nothing you've experienced has been meaningless. Nothing you've learned has been wasted. Every delay, every lesson, every unanswered question, has quietly prepared you for this very season. So walk into tomorrow with confidence. Leave yesterday where it belongs. Keep your heart open. Keep your spirit steady. And keep trusting the one who sees every page of your story before it is written. Because sometimes, the greatest blessing isn't merely that someone is finally ready to speak. It's that you've finally become the person who can receive those words with wisdom, peace, and unwavering strength. And perhaps, as soon as you finish listening to this message, a new chapter has already begun.